Last time we had looked how minimum wage would affect the marginal labor cost curve of uh, Monopsony um, company, and we have seen that basically when we have minimum wage uh, at any level of employment uh, where basically the wage the company actually needs to pay to get that level of employment is lower the WM. Basically, WM represents a horizontal line at WM represents the marginal labor cost curve. That means marginal labor cost for low level of employment is basically less than will increase as a result of minimum wage. But at higher level of employments, basically that cost will increase. And at B, actually, marginal labor cost, uh, well, at higher levels, marginal labor cost is lower, basically. And basically, I mean, at B, actually, total labor cost is the same, um, for which you need to calculate this area and this area, basically. Um, however, when you have a minimum wage, that means when you employ more people, basically the cost you have, the additional cost you have is just equal to the wage you pay to the worker. That's because you don't need to increase the wage of the previous workers, uh, which was part of the cost that existed before. Uh, that cost existed because when you have low amount of employment, you needed to pay less to those workers. Um, and that means when you employ one more worker, you need to pay that worker a higher wage, which means you need to increase wage for everyone. So basically, your cost includes the wage increase you need to do for other workers also. But as long as basically the wage you actually need to pay is lower than WM, basically WM is your WM is the marginal labor cost because you don't need to increase the wage. I mean, the wage the workers are willing to accept it anyway below the WM all the way up to the point B. So you just need to pay to the next worker also the minimum wage, just like you need to pay for the previous worker, because you are forced to do so by the law. Um, well, now I needed to look because I could not see the time, but let me show you that once you pass the point D, now in order to hire more workers, you need to pay more than WU. And that fact means now you need to pay more workers if you want to hire more workers. Again, we assume the labor productivity of your workers is the same. And that means basically when you increase your workforce more than WM, now you need to pay the wage, the new wage, which is higher than WU, to the new workers, plus you need to increase the wage of all workers up to this point. Because now you passed the WU point, you need to start increase your wage beyond the minimum wage. So your marginal cost suddenly jumps because it's not WU, but it also includes all the amount you need to pay for them, rest of the workforce, the additional wage you need to pay to them. So basically, your marginal cost, labor cost, will jump to F. So basically, the marginal labor cost starts as a horizontal line at WU and then jumps at the point D to F and continues at this marginal labor cost line after the point F. Well, this means your marginal labor cost curve will intersect your marginal labor cost revenue curve at L dot U. Still at that U, the marginal product of the of your worker, which is the marginal revenue the workers bring, which is here, is higher than the wage, which is WU, the minimum wage. However, basically the difference, the exploitation is decreased by the minimum wage in this case, and employment is increased from LM to L.U. So by shifting the cost of the increasing costs the company faces at higher level of employments to the earlier employment levels, basically you encourage the company to increase its labor costs, increase its labor supply all the way up to L.U. So basically minimum wage forces the company to increase its labor, makes the company to increase labor supply, because when you pay to the initial workforce when the workforce is low level, lower amount of higher amount of wage, well, the cost of hiring more workers will basically decrease for the company. So since that cost has decreased, then the company will increase the labor supply, because now the cost of adding additional worker is not anymore that high. Well, this process will continue. Well, this basically doesn't mean that the company is, let me look to the time, the company is able to increase its labor wage, the state is able to increase the employment level the higher it sets the minimum wage. Basically, the state can increase the employment level only up to the point. Well, the state, the minimum wage level set by the state has a positive effect on employment level only up to the point C, WC basically. At WC, well, basically the minimum wage is WC, then it will be the horizontal line. So it will be basically the employment level will be LC in this case. So and then at the C it will jump to this point. But so that means it will intersect the marginal revenue product curve at the point C, which means, as I said, the employment level will be LC. LC is the highest potential employment level the company could have, and the exploitation rate will be 0 at this point. But if the wage level is higher than WC, for example, at this point, it will intersect, for example, if it is here, for example, it will intersect the marginal revenue product curve here. So basically increasing the wage from WC to this level will basically decrease the labor supply. It won't increase the labor supply, but it will decrease the labor supply compared with the case when the minimum wage is WC. But when you increase the minimum wage from WM to WC, basically you increase the employment level. When the minimum wage is lower than WM, basically you don't have any. The minimum wage doesn't have any effect on the labor supply, at least for this company. Why? Because anyway, I mean, in that case, when it is below, the minimum wage is below WM, basically, for example, if it is at this level, it will be the marginal labor cost curve will be a horizontal line like this, and then it will jump up here, and it will intersects with the MLC curve after this point, which means it will intersect with marginal revenue curve still at the point A. So the employment level will still be LM. So there will be nothing could change for the company. I hope the basics are clear, and you might look to this graph and basically think yourself and basically And basically, if you have any questions, you can answer it. But the graph is actually shows the basics, and I think by thinking on how things will work, you will able to discover the further details, even if you want yourself. And it's nice to play with the graph, think about the different possibilities. I encourage you to do so if you want to do that. Okay, let's. Well, what is in the real life WC? Well, when you have, for example, wages, minimum wage at or employment level LM, well, of course, the question is whether the monopsony case is right. But if you have a monopsony in the market, let's just think about this. What is the WC in the real life? Well, that's a big question, and that's the question can be asked in a way that if the companies didn't have a monopsony power, what would be the equilibrium wage? That's the main question. And that level of wage is basically WC, which is competitive level of wage, basically. Okay. So give meaning to the model. When a company is a monopsony in the labor market, increasing number of workers employed will also increase the wages it pays to its workers. If the company pays the same wage to all workers, then after it hires one more worker, it doesn't need to pay a higher wage for new workers, but it also needs to increase wage level of all workers. When monopolies consider hiring one more worker, they will only consider extra wage they pay to the new worker, but also the extra wage they need to pay to existing workers. Monopsonies only hire more workers if that the increase in revenue brought by the new worker is more than the extra wage paid to the new worker plus the extra wage paid to the existing workers. The workers work for monopsonies are paid less than the value of the marginal product of the last worker. In other words, they are exploited according to neoclassical definition, not Marxian definition, neoclassical definition. If a minimum wage is set, of course, they are also exploited according to Marxian definition, but according to Marxian definition, the system cannot exist without exploitation. If a minimum wage is set in a monopsonic labor market, employers are not capable of decrease the wage rate by decreasing number of workers they employ. Since decreasing the employment level no longer decreases the average labor costs, potentially minimum wage may increase the employment level. So now we can come to the Kart-Kruger study. Well, one point actually I can say, if you remember the first video, and we might ask basically, you might reconsider the claim which was made in that video, which was basically the guy was paying a higher wage to the half of its labor force, not all of its labor force, but half of its labor force, and half of its labor force is paid minimum wage. And that's an interesting point. That actually, interestingly, the guy on the TV is just silence him at there and just ask, why are you paying more to the half of your workforce? Well, basically, half of the workforce was more experienced and more productive, and basically this experience and more, relative experience and more productivity was rewarded, and it should be rewarded to increase the encourage the workers to be more productive. But the benchmark wage which was given to the lowest workers with lowest productivity was minimum wage. Well, how employers can encourage their workers to increase their productivity, that's an interesting topic itself. But one question we can ask is, why is the entrance level wage minimum wage? Why was the guy not paying a wage higher than minimum wage to attract at the very entrance level the most productive fast food workers? Well, I will talk a little bit more on this in the next part, since we are very close to the 15 minutes mark. See you in the next part.